Hi everyone, this is Meryl Geffner. I am the librarian that works with the English 102 classes. This video will walk you through how to search for scholarly journal articles using one of our library databases. So let's get started. We're going to start on the library homepage. There are two ways to search for journal articles in the library collection. One is to use this big broad search OneSearch, which I'm not going to focus on in this video. I'm going to go directly into an individual database because it often is a more effective way to narrow your search down specifically to the type of article that you need. So I'm going to scroll down to Library Resources. I'm going to click on Search Databases, and we're going to skip through the top and go down to Search a Database. And I'm going to be using one, but for your research, I would recommend several. One is ProQuest, some of you might be familiar with that. Another is Academic Search Premier, which is the one I'll be using in the video. Another is Gale Academic OneFile, and if we scroll a little farther down, I'd also recommend JSTOR or SocIndex with full text. These are all multidisciplinary databases which have a good selection of journal articles. But let's go back to Academic Search Premier, and I'm going to click on that. And because Academic Search Premier, as are all those other ones on the list, these are subscription databases that we pay for you to use. They're only available to Edmonds students, so you do need to log in. And you will log in using your Triton ID. Ignore what I'm typing. Faculty log in differently. But you need to use your Triton ID, not your CTC link. So if you haven't yet set up a Triton ID account, you should have a username and a password. Please do that as soon as possible. It is the only way that you'll be able to, that you can access the library resources. So I'm going to log in here. Oops. Oops, okay, I did something wrong in my password, it looks like. Let's try it again. There we go. Okay, so now we are in Academic Search Premier, and if you've used any of the databases before, like I said, many of you may have used ProQuest, you'll see it works similar. It has these boxes where you put in specific search terms that you want the database to look for, and it links them together using these an and or not. These are called Boolean operators. Searching in the database is somewhat different than searching in Google, where you can write in sentences, you can ask questions, you can put in so many different keywords, search terms, and you'll get thousands of results. In the databases, they operate with much more specific language. So you want to look at your topic and identify at least two search terms that you could use to start with, and you could put them in the boxes, and the idea is that if you are very specific with your terms, you should get a nice list of results, not too many, not too few, but results that are very on target and relevant to what you are looking for. As your research deepens, you will change up your keywords, become maybe more specific. You might want to broaden them out. That will depend on how your research goes and the different information that you're searching for to really dig deep and explore the topic that you have selected. But I'm going to use an example. Let's say that I am researching bullying or violence against LGBTQ youths. So I'm going to start with this, LGBTQ, sorry. And I'm going to say teens. And you can see this drop down gives me a suggestion. You might want to look at these, but don't assume that they're necessarily what you want. But this one is helpful because you can see there are various terms used to describe teenagers or people of that age group. So this just puts in kind of all the options. So it's going to search for all the articles that might use adolescent, they might use teens, we don't know. So this just creates some more options. And then lastly, I'm going to say bullying. Let's start with bullying. You might want to broaden that out a little bit, but let's just start with that. Okay, so I have my terms, and again, with these terms, I'm telling the database I want articles that have these terms on the record and are focused on in this general topic area. The other most important piece besides your search terms when you're in the databases, and I'm going to scroll down here, is this section here, limit your results. So I'm going to check full text, and what that will do, it will give me only full text articles. There are articles in the databases that don't have the full article attached to them, and you want to make sure you get the articles that have the full article. And then the next thing is to check peer reviewed. This will ensure that you get only articles from peer reviewed / scholarly / academic. We kind of use all three of those terms interchangeably, but by checking that, you will weed out all the magazines and newspapers. So you may have an assignment, or you may have a requirement that you have to have a certain number of scholarly peer review academic journals. So check that box so you can get those journal articles. And then at a certain point in your research, you can uncheck it and then see what else the database has in terms of magazine articles or newspaper articles. But for our purposes, for this video, we're focusing on scholarly work, so I'm going to check that box. Let's do a search. Okay. So I got 62 results, which is actually a pretty good number. I tell students to aim for around 50 or less, only because you can then scan through the titles. You don't want to just grab the first title that you see on the list. You really want to be able to look at the titles and focus on a few that look really interesting to you. So if you have too many, you're not going to want to look through all of them. So you want to have a reasonable amount. And you can use your keywords in such a way that you should be able to get a reasonable list to then scroll through. So I'm just going to kind of scroll through here to get an idea, looking at some of these titles, and you can see all of them say academic journal. That's because we checked that box. You can also see over here, if I want to limit my results even more, I can change the date range. If I want something very current, I could slide this up. I can just play around with it quite a bit. All of those are different ways of focusing your searches. But let's see, let's just grab this one right here, number 5. Okay, so now we have an article to look at, and what I want to do is kind of go through this is called the record, and it's got all sorts of important information on it that you will need, and I'm going to go through it kind of quickly just to give you a sense of all these different pieces. So up here, this is the title of the article. Then we have 3 authors, and all 3 of them are here. The source, this is the name of the journal that this article is published in. Right? You're always going to have, with any kind of publication, if you're finding an article, whether it's in the databases or on the web, most likely that article is going to be published in some kind of a publication. So it could be a journal like this one, it could be a magazine, it could be a newspaper, it could be just an organization's website, but there is going to be a bigger source that the article is published in. So always look for that piece, and this is the title of the journal. Okay, then we have some subject terms and we have some keywords. These might be very useful to you, particularly then if you want to, it might always look at these lists and see, it might give you some ideas of other keywords or search terms to use, or even ideas of how to maybe think about your topic that you hadn't thought of before. So if you have a list that not every article does, always take a look at the list. Then we have an abstract, and the abstract, this is a summary of the article. This is extremely useful because before you dive into an article, and I would say, yeah, this is 19 pages, you can see up here. Journal articles do tend to be very long, so before you dive into a 19-page article, read the abstract first to make sure it's really something that you think is going to be useful to you. I also jumped ahead a little too quickly. I just wanted to point out this information is important for your citation, but also the date here is very important. You want to make sure, you want to know what the date is, and it's depending on your topic and your thesis, how current it needs to be. Okay, that's up to you to judge. This one is quite current. So 2.5 years is pretty good for a journal article. Okay, so we have all those pieces. We have our abstract. Then the most important part is on the side here, you'll see the full text, and we have an option of HTML, which you can see that's right down here, or we can open up the full PDF, which is basically a photograph of what it looks like in the journal itself. I'm just going to, a little bit quicker, just zoom down to the HTML, and the nice thing about this here is it does break it down by sections, because when you want, the one way to approach these Actually, I think I will open up the PDF. One way to approach these journal articles is, because some of them, again, this is 19 pages, can be very daunting, and a lot to read through. They tend to be very dense. They often use language that is very specific to the discipline. Might not be language you're familiar with. So one way to approach it is, when you find an article, start with the abstract, of course, and then read the introduction. Usually there's some kind of an introduction, and just read through that. And then before you get into the meat of it, jump down to the to the end. Where's the end? See if I could find it. So that look for a conclusion. This one doesn't have a heading that says conclusion, but this might be good to look at limitations, strengths, and suggestions for further research. And so basically the idea is you want to start at the intro, jump to the end, look for any kind of conclusion, or sometimes it's called a discussion. And then after that, work your way into the middle and just basically use the headings. And that's why, again, that HTML version, but you can see here are these headings, and use the headings and be selective, because you don't necessarily need all these charts and graphs for the amount of research that you're doing. So use the headings and just kind of maybe read the sections that you think are most relevant. Okay. The very last thing I want to show you, of course, you can see all of these in-text citations, and those will key down to the works cited. What you have on your paper will be a works cited list. In this article, it will be references, and this is always a key indicator. If you're never sure if you find an article, if it is academic, scholarly, or if it's not, something that is a giveaway is whether it has a list of references, and those lists of references should be extensive if it is a scholarly journal article. And you can see here, this is all the different studies and articles that these three authors used to put together their study, so quite extensive. Okay, these lists are very useful for a couple things. One is they will tell you what kind of sources they used, and you also might want to browse through and see if you land on an article that you think might be helpful for you, and you can just try to track it down, and that will save you some search time. Okay. So that is it in terms of the article itself. I want to do one more thing, and if you look along the side here, there are tools in all of the databases that are very helpful to you. So one is print. You could print this article. I can email this article to myself. I also could, if you click on this, it will automatically put it into your Google Drive. So if you use the Google tools, this is a great tool to use. The point is, figure out some way to organize the sources that you find. You are going to be looking at a lot of sources for your research paper, so you want to have some place where you put everything you find, and then you can begin to read through them. You might not use all of them, but better to have them stored somewhere than having to redo your searches over and over to try to find them. And then lastly, one feature which I cannot forget to show you, all the databases will let you generate a citation, and here it is, MLA. And here's the citation here, and you can certainly copy and paste it into a works cited list, but I always remind students, please double check it against our works cited guide that we have on the library website, or OWL at Purdue, or something else that your instructor may have given you. Okay, so I think that is all I wanted to show you for today. I apologize for the length of this. If you have any questions, please contact me or your instructor for help. And thanks for listening, and have a great rest of your day.